next we turn to Patrick Malilo from Department of Water and Sanitation. I wonder, can we start putting up the slides for Patrick? Just while we do that, a couple of things. Please, I can see already some questions in the chat, so please add your questions to the chat. After Patrick's presentation, we will have some time for questions and answers, because that concludes the end of part 1 of the webinar, before we move on more specifically to coordination in part 2 of the webinar. So please be ready for your, if you've got any questions so far, please post those, and we'll have a discussion, time for discussion after Patrick's presentation. So, but without further ado, I'll pass over to Patrick. Please, over to you.
Thank you, Alistair, and thank you, Sarah and Tatiana. I hope everybody can hear me. It's a great pleasure and also a good opportunity for us to talk to a global audience, and thank you for everybody who has made the time to be here. We can look at South Africa's experiences, and if you can just go to the next slide, please, on SDG reporting. We have had a very interesting arrangement, and I think I thought it is important to put this up front for ourselves. We have an arrangement where our enabling environment allows us to really, work at all levels. The first level is in country, is Statistics South Africa, who coordinate the reporting for all SDGs in the country. And then that has been divided into 4 themes or areas for reporting clusters: economic, social, environment, and justice. So in our situation, we fall in with SDG 6, we fall in within the environment cluster, which aligns our national reporting as well. Our department is responsible for the SDG 6, and we established a working group for reporting. And we have a coordinator, Mr. Mark Bannister. I think we all also on our side want to pay tribute to Mark in terms of the work that he has put in here, great work in terms of conceptualizing and coming out with our reporting arrangements. And that reporting arrangement is what is given on the figure there, where the TT is essentially a task team. So we've divided the reporting into task teams, and we are in task team 6.5. So the task teams are responsible for the targets. So our target is 6.5 with the 2 indicators. So one of the things that you have been raising, I think it's Tatiana and Sarah in your presentation, is the alignment between the indicators. For us, it's a bit easier because we are looking at both indicators falling under the target 6.5 being coordinated by one focal point. So that's one learning experience from our side that we have found works very well. We can go to the next slide, please. So you'll see that, and because of that, we've then been able to do the alignment and actually conceptualize target 6.5 as actually having 5 clusters. The enabling environment, institutions and participations, management instruments, financing, and transboundary water. So that's how we look at it. And within that, we find a couple of red flags around financing, revenue collection. And then on the transboundary water, we find some red flags on groundwater, I think, as everybody has attested to, in terms of delineation of aquifers. We are lucky also that we have developed quite significantly into the extent that we have 3 basin commissions, the INMACOM, ORASECOM, and LIMCOM. The latest one to come on board within this reporting cycle is the INMACOM, which came into operation last year. So that is completed our coverage in terms of the work that we are doing. So that's a bit of an advantage and a move forward on our case as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the reporting process, which I think we would want to learn from others and also see what others are doing. We have kind of divided it into a 6-step or 8-step reporting process, where we work with the draft report based on the template or questionnaire that we work with. We then have gone round to do the update of our stakeholders. On the SDG 651, we find quite a bigger group of stakeholders than the 652, but then the two lead into each other. And then we have done orientation workshops, particularly during the 2020 reporting cycle online. And then we drafted a draft 2 report, which was sent to stakeholders for inputs. And then we do some focus groups in terms of discussions on certain sub-themes. Again, these were online, particularly because of the COVID, and then interviews with key respondents in terms of step 6. So in this instance, this will be our river basin commissions. So in 2020, I had, I remember calling in a number of our basin commission and working through with them. Now, importantly, also within the task team, we have got a number of specialists, and they've done great work in terms of going through the report and checking and ensuring that things are okay. So you'll find on the groundwater side, we have our colleagues from the groundwater sections in the department who are looking at this report, and they also led on this stakeholder consultation and verification exercise to ensure that we get the correct information, or at least as close as possible. So, and then after that, we then have a draft 5 of the report that we then is consolidated, and then we submit. From our reporting cycle last time, we also found a lot of to and froing. I think Aurelian, they basically raised a few questions, which helped us, I think, to focus and relook at a number of things that we were having, and also raise some questions. So that was quite interesting exercise. It's a process that is, to and fro in a sense, iterative ultimately until we get to the final reporting. So because we've started this in 2017 into 2020 and now in 2023, we are finding we are now doing more of refinement of information. So going forward, that's what we will be doing. Next slide, please. So in terms of some of the lessons that we have picked up, I think at the beginning in 2017, the issues about lack of awareness on SDGs, we had limited time. We underestimated at that time the amount of work involved. So we held a workshop with a number of people, but it was not all inclusive. And as a result, we found that the information that we may have put in, we had to revise it when we came to some of that information when we came to 2020. But we realized from that exercise that the one issue we needed to focus on is integrity of the information and data, but also to have partnerships. So you see that we identify the Global Water Partnership in South Africa, as a partner, our SDG or Southern African Development Cooperation. Now, when we came to 2020, we find the same kind of issues propping up. But further to that, the pandemic, I think, came in, and the issues around the issues of resources, and we try to work around that. But again, I reiterate, our task team, comprised of a number of specialists, has really worked very hard to put in, and assisting in this process. But what we have also figured out is that there's quite a depth and width in terms of the reporting, which requires a lot of information. And I think for the other countries, I don't know their experiences, but I would say also when you're going through this exercise, do not underestimate if you need to do justice, the amount of work that is required here. And we must have a continuity in terms of capacity building as well. And the gap analysis that we conducted, again, we sort of go back to Mark in terms of conceptualizing, also helped us to identify intervention points, which I think we then have to take back to the implementers to work through to say, okay, we have found, for instance, in this area, the aquifer is not fully delineated. Then we need to be working together either at a core basin state level or at multi-basin level. Yeah, thanks. Next slide, please. So
Patrick,
in terms of the
sorry, I'm loving the presentation, but I'm a bit conscious of time. So if you could wrap up in a couple of minutes, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you very much. So in terms of the issues that we picked up, I think I'll just reflect more in terms of the increased support that we are getting, and then also the issues of concern in that our basins may not be at the same level of development, and some people may ask, is this translating into action? And the fact that we need to be explicit. So yeah, next slide, please. So this is the last one in terms of how we looking to doing the acceleration. I think the main issue is we have done an assessment, and we've got a national water and sanitation master plan in our country here. And if you look at the 5 accelerators from the UN and what we have got in terms of our specific objectives, they kind of a very close alignment. And we are focusing on those and working on those areas to ensure that we actually do accelerate. And like I indicated, refinement of the information, verification, checking, and ensuring that we have integrity of information. So that's our experience in that level. Enabling environment being very good, the task teams working very well, and then keeping on working at it to ensure that we have data integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That's wonderful, and thanks. Sorry to rush you, but I think very rich there in terms of really emphasizing that importance of national coordination, linking 651 with 652, linking with the RBOs, and really appreciate that slide with the challenges and how they're resolved. And as we say, we'll share the slides. So I think that's a nice one to focus in on. And thanks so much for sharing that experience.